Alright, let's get into the video. Madden NFL 22's franchise is a slow and overdue burn. Loads of new changes and decisions in a stable mode don't seem like a lot until they do. Every Madden NFL seems to neglect it mode. The best news about Madden NFL 22, that mode is Madden Ultimate Team. For once, Ultimate Team is the mode that it goes begging for once. Madden Ultimate Team is the mode that gets a maintenance level update from last year. Good. Madden lifers have long resented Ultimate Team for all its microtransactions and monetization, accusing it of sucking up what little oxygen a year's development cycle leaves. While core features and gameplay are left grasping and a semi-conscious, but for Madden NFL 22, EA stood pat on the Ultimate Team, and that alone is a message for the community just as much as the franchise mode overdue improvements and badly needed refreshings. Temper your expectations though. Madden NFL 22 does not immediately feel like a transformative work. Even in the first slate of choices players can make with the rework franchise mode, the main menu and the hub are basically the same as last year's game. For example, in gameplay particularly, I felt like I was picking up right where I left off in Madden 21. I even plugged in the same gameplay sliders and options I used last year and found pretty much everything behaving as I expected. Madden NFL 22's virtues are more of a slow burn. Take gameplay momentum. The new boost and buff module, affecting games in all modes. Gameplay momentum doesn't seem like much until it seems like a lot. Basically, it's a meter at the top of the screen, somewhat resembling that of a fighting game. Each team has 2 milestones on that meter, apparently chosen a random game to game whether either good things happen for them or bad things happen for the other team. The home team has a third buff theme to the real-life atmosphere, or advantage to the stadium it brings. The home team brings the game with the buff already lit. So at Washington, opposing runners will have an increasingly difficult time juking and changing directions right out of the box. In week 2 of my first playthrough, I went down to scores the Washingtons, but come on, they're Washingtons. I'll just grind out a long drive from Barkley and we'll come back. Yeah, not with Barkley walding like a kindergartner, holding in a BM. His cuts and jukes were nerfed on his first carry, and the game told me this would only get worse. I may have restarted this game just to play with more conservative offense and less dependency on my first star running back. Another example of the game day momentum sneaking up on me in another early game, I wasn't really paying attention to the fact the Giants were down early until I reflexively pulled the right trigger to see the play diagram and wondered what the hell I was looking at. That was not the play I called right. But the diminishing play clock fooled me into thinking I mistakenly called a slant route play. No, I called off a tackle run for Devontae Booker, but by falling behind, I triggered a game day momentum nerf that shows me the incorrect play art before the snap, simulating the confusion my team faced it and now came to the line of scrimmage. Booker took the handoff as planned. I was caught off guard by that and dragged down for a loss. If the Super X Factor that Madden introduced 2 years ago didn't get your attention, I rarely cared. Unless these power-ups are involved, a player I created, then the game day momentum will make you care now. One of those nerfs you may get or go up against keeps a superstar player from entering the zone. The zone is where the real good stuff happens. for the best of the best players. And in franchise, you can change zone abilities for superstars on your team. Giving Barkley the freight train tackle, breaking perks make him damn near unstoppable. But if you see the zoned out icon at the beginning of the game, that absolutely tightens up my play calling. I do not want to get banished from the set zone. In franchise, I'm more observant of my players' talents and limitations across the board. Thanks to the biggest day-to-day change there, the weekly practice and the progression loop in the past Madden's practices delivered an edge to a certain plays in the next game. Deep throws, no offense, or zone blitzes on defense, but it was always hard to tell if I've ever gained anything by sticking with this supposed game plan. In Madden NFL 22, practice is now a background sim rather than a mini-game drill, but franchise players are tasked with monitoring their players' fatigue and keeping their positional group out of full pads. For example, if they're worn out, players can also pick up practice time injuries, as defensive backs James Bradbury did in my first week of camp. Nope told to focus on the middle. The Giants defense sure as hell focused on the middle, and the Jets' Tevin Coleman went nuts in his lone quarter of duty, ripping off 3 huge sweeps for 41 yards. I may have restarted this game too. Franchise's new perk tree for the coach staff is another thing that seems like a embroidery at first. This is mainly because the perk costs are so high and you incur the staff points to buy them at a very slow rate. Meeting at all the game day goals for my head coach, offense and defense coordinators still return 13 staff points, and the first available perk on my head coach tree costs 20. But this kind of slow growth is appropriate, remembering how overpowered my created players would get in a single season of the last year's Madden. And now I'm motivated to pile up the perks and flesh out my created coach, to really put out some long haul thought into the Giants team, instead of its caretaking for only season two. There's a perk well down the road for the head coach called the final piece that I'm worried about. Though with it all, players earn bonus XP as if they're playing style matches. My head coach playbook and scheme, I've rarely thought about developing my own scheme in the past Maddens, instead playing the cards I've been dealt with, working with the group's strengths and then spot wielding the roster with the best available drafts, picks, and the free agents. While the final piece may encourage scheme experimentations, it could also obviate the need to choose an offensive or defensive scheme, much less draft or sign players to fit in. Franchise mode is the Madden NFL 22 does show its newfound depth within the training camp and first weeks of the NFL season, even if unlocking and really seeing what it has to offer will take a little longer. Also, some even more sophisticated systems such as scouting players for the upcoming NFL draft will be added as a post-launch content. But there's no question the franchise is loud and clear. Message received, Jester from EA Tyborn. Giving longtime players the switches they've always wanted to throw, like hiring and firing coordinators. It's always a way to bypass the slow accruing of staff points and get assistance with great perks out of the box. Still, Madden's NFL 22's franchise is by far most technocratic and least personal of all the licensed sports simulations, career modes, and it gets the way of making this a personal obsession. Other players may feel differently, but the game's presentation and the UI does little to soften the in-dome feeling. If anything, it makes it feel even more corporate and impersonal. This is probably because the sport itself, as a team, control modes of NBA 2K20, well 2K, whatever, and MLB The Show are both a distant second to their engrossing single-player career modes. But in Madden, much like real life, the team comes first, and players are more resources than characters. Still, Madden 22's franchise doesn't give me a rich, emergent narrative or the sense that I'm really molding the outcome of the team or the league. The coaching tree may be a role-playing game element, but there isn't much actual role-playing in the franchise at all. Some of this disappointment comes from yet another woeful face of the franchise mode, which I'll address in the future write-up, but franchise does have two other roles to pursue with the team's solo player and owner. Oh, and yes, it sounds so rote, but it's still true. Neither career path got any changes or improvements over the last year's games. But hey, at least I can't blame Madden Ultimate Team for that. Madden NFL 22 launches August 20th on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Windows, PC, and Xbox One and the Xbox Series X and S. The game was played using Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 download codes provided by the Electronic Arts Vox Media and partnerships. These do not influence content, though Vox Media may earn commissions for the products purchased by via links. You can find the additional information about Polygon's ethics policy here. Okay, that's it for the video. If you guys found this video informative, like, share, and subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.